Hello everyone, this is Hinsi. Welcome you all after a long time. I'm happy to restart my storytelling sessions. This time, the stories are mostly for kids, but of course, it is suitable for adults too. Please relax and listen. Here we start our story. This is the very famous story of the Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there lived a merchant and his 3 daughters. The merchant was very rich and he kept his daughters very happy. He showered them with all the possible gifts that money could buy. He was very fond of his youngest daughter, Beauty, who was kind-hearted and gentle. Things were going very well for the merchant and his daughters. But they were in for a very rude shock. One day, the merchant received terrible news. All his ships were lost in a storm at sea. With a heavy heart, he sold all his belongings to settle his debts and went to live in the country with his 3 daughters. All his daughters, except for Beauty, complained bitterly as they no longer wore fine clothes or had a carriage to ride. Beauty, who looked pretty even in her red and torn dress, grieved for her father, who was so upset. "We must help and encourage our father to be happy, though we are in misery," she often told her sisters. Beauty never complained. She learned to cook and sew, wash and dust, and worked in the fields at the same time. Her elder sisters never helped her with the work. Instead, they jeered at her. They mocked her and said, "You look a sight in your rough dress and tangled hair." Beauty was so kind that she didn't even answer back. She worked harder and harder, hoping that her sisters would become humble and learn to work. One day, when a messenger brought the merchant news of his lost ship, he decided to go to the port. He said to his daughters, whom he loved dearly, "Tomorrow I am going on a journey. What present shall I bring you, my dear ones?" While his elder daughters asked for new gowns and jewels, all that Beauty asked for was a single red rose. The merchant rode off after he bid goodbye to his daughters. He promised to return soon with all that they had asked for. When he reached the port, he was saddened when he learned that it was not his ship that had been found. He set off back home with a heavy heart. He thought, "How can I tell my daughters that I have no gifts for them after all the promises that I made?" The merchant felt hopeless and weary. Dark clouds spread across the sky. The wind howled eerily and now snow began to fall. Suddenly he realized that he had lost his way and was in the deep forest. Extremely exhausted, weak from hunger, and shivering in the cold, he almost gave up hopes of survival. Then he saw light streaming through the trees. It was from a castle up ahead. The merchant cautiously approached the castle. The doors were open. He walked through the deserted passages and reached a large room that was exquisitely furnished. Wearily, he flung himself on the bed and in no time was fast asleep. He did not even realize that the castle doors were open and that the castle was deserted with no one inside. Next day, when he got up, he began to search for the lord of the castle. He was anxious and troubled when he saw no one. He wandered into the garden and he saw a bush with the most beautiful red roses he had ever seen in all his life. The flowers reminded him immediately of Beauty's request. He thought of his humble daughter, and with these tender thoughts in mind, he plucked a single rose from the bush. No sooner had he done this than a terribly ugly and hideous beast appeared before him. Trembling with fear, the merchant fell to his knees. The beast roared with anger. You have entered my castle, slept in my bed, and now you dare to steal from my garden. You surely deserve to die and pay for this with your life. Forgive me, I meant you no harm. This rose I have plucked is for my daughter Beauty. I beg of you to spare me and let me return home. The merchant said, his voice shivering with fear. The beast replied, On one condition will I spare you. You must bring your daughter to me at the end of 3 months. Promise me this, and you will be free to go. The merchant, who was terrified, found himself agreeing to what the beast asked him. The beast, who seemed pleased, gave him a chest filled with gold and permitted him to leave. The merchant arrived home with the gold. His 2 elder daughters were happy to have the gold. Only Beauty, who saw her father sunk in despair, asked him what had happened and tried to comfort him when she heard the sad news. The sisters too tried to look as sad as possible when the day of Beauty's departure came. But deep down in their hearts, they were happy to get rid of Beauty as they were jealous of her. It was dark when Beauty reached the castle. She entered and came upon a table that was laid with the finest of plates and goblets made of gold, and food that was delicious. Beauty sat down and began to eat. She was anxious and nervous at the same time. Then the beast appeared before her. She shuddered at the sight of his terrifying appearance. The beast addressed her in a gentle voice. He led her to an enormous room that had white satin curtains, elegantly patterned carpets, a case full of books, and many other lovely things that her heart would desire. Each evening, the beast would come and meet her. He brought her many gifts. He was so kind that Beauty began to grow fond of him. She even looked forward to meet him. Will you marry me? The beast asked Beauty in a humble and low voice one night. No, I will never ever love you enough to marry you, cried Beauty and fled. Time passed and the Beauty forgot the beast's proposal. One day, the beast gave her a magic mirror. Through the mirror, she saw that her father was extremely ill. Please let me return home for some time, pleaded Beauty. Very well, you may go, but if you do not return to meet me, at the end of 8 days I will die, said the beast. Beauty agreed and left. Beauty was happy to see her family again, but her sisters envied her when they saw her dressed in all finery. Let us convince her to stay, they decided. Their false affection moved Beauty, and she stayed. One night, she had a vivid dream that the beast was dying. She rushed to the castle garden and found the beast lying under a tree. She bent down and kissed him. Don't die, beast, for I love you, she said. The next moment, the beast was transformed into a handsome prince. He said, with your words of love, you have broken a spell cast on me by a wicked witch. Beauty and the prince were married, and they lived in the castle happily ever after. I hope you enjoy the story. Please like and subscribe if you really enjoyed the story. Thank you. Till we meet again, signing off.